The following program is made possible by the generous support of the Colorado Water Conservation Board, the Arkansas Basin Roundtable's public education, participation, and outreach program, and by the Mass Communications Department at Colorado State University, Pueblo. High in the Rocky Mountains, the Arkansas River begins its journey to the eastern plains of Colorado. Throughout its course, the river and its water sustains and nourishes life. One of the hardest working rivers in the country, the Arkansas River in Colorado drains more than 28,000 square miles, making it the largest river basin in the state. Join us now as we explore the Arkansas River from Leadville to Lamar, truly the heart and soul of central and southeastern Colorado.
So often we think about the value of water being what comes from the tap in our household, just like it is in Pueblo or Fowler or Manzanola, wherever it is on the Arkansas Valley. But also as you think about the value of water for the length of the Arkansas Valley, there's a recreational use that takes place, especially in the upper part of the Arkansas River Basin. There's an environmental and ecological use for all of the species that get their lifeblood from that water. There's an industrial use that takes place, especially in the middle part of the Arkansas River, and then an agricultural use too. We'd leave something out though if we didn't consider what the cultural value of water is too, how it becomes part of our everyday life and our everyday culture and really reflects our values and interests.
Because water serves so many different human needs, that's part of why it's so fascinating from an economic point of view. But economics is actually about values, choice-making trade-offs, and those really come fully to the forefront when we think about water. So the ways that we make choices about the services that we dedicate water to providing immediately spills over into communities and livelihoods.
The semi-arid landscape of the Arkansas River Basin gives way to lush and fertile fields where farmers use water rights dating back to before the state of Colorado itself. Hundreds of miles from its source, Arkansas River water is used to grow a wide variety of crops and produce. Matt Heinrich has farmed the lower Arkansas Valley for nearly 30 years and works for the Palmer Land Trust and their ranch and farmland program.
The Bessemer Ditch in Pueblo is a perfect example, right? You've got wonderful farm ground, some of the best soils actually in the whole western United States, a high quality water that comes right out of the Pueblo Reservoir, a reputation that's growing and selling Pueblo chili, right, which is pretty much becoming very famous. There's some great farmers out there, been growing it for years, and some young farmers that want to continue that brand. But you have to have water to do it, and there's a lot of pressure on that system, right? The Pueblo Board of Waterworks owns almost a third of that system. So there's some conversations about how can we continue to farm, how can we continue to keep that water on the land, but then also respect that during times of severe drought that we do need to take care of human consumption and human needs first. I mean, they're still the highest priority.
The numbers and the votes are in the cities, and that's where the dollars are. Those farmers can't afford to pay for water what a consumer in town, in the city can.
From a dollar perspective, a gallon of water in the city is probably more valuable than a gallon of water on the farm. But as our former Secretary of Agriculture used to say, don't complain about agriculture with your mouth full, right?
The water that I use has probably already been used by some other farm or somewhere else. We have a sustainable water source. It's those snows in the mountains and our reservoirs which capture those waters. In these conditions, 40, 45 days of water, most guys could actually grow a crop. If it's bad, it's really bad. If it's good, it's pretty good, which is kind of the story of the Arkansas Valley anyway. I mean, most of the ditches are short in a typical year. And then stick more on that way, okay? I mean, you could arguably say that almost all the water that's used by municipalities or industry in Colorado at one time probably was on a farm. So all this water at some point in time irrigated somebody's farm.
We all know that the human race is going to get the water. We just got to figure out how we can live together where there's less waste. What the answer is, I don't know. Somebody's a lot smarter than me is going to have to figure that one out.
The day is coming where the day is here, where people are concerned about where their food comes from, We've got to keep agriculture viable.
People in this area can see the farmers markets. They can see the irrigated crops out in the county, here in Pueblo County. And I think it's really important to remind people that you have to have water to be able to do those things. And when water leaves a community, it definitely has an impact. So it's important to remind people that we're all tied together.
We have great representatives that understand the water issues, that understand agricultural issues, and that do work for us. But it's a constant battle keeping that to the fore, just because we are fewer and we have fewer resources to battle this huge issue that is part of Colorado.
And I'm worried each and every day about what's going to happen to our rural communities as Main Street gets abandoned, as businesses move away, as families move away, and as we see fewer ranchers in the area, fewer farmers in the area. The only way we're going to survive in agriculture is if we can figure out how to bring new generations of families to agriculture and keep the existing generations of families that we already have.
I am fourth generation farmer, which is pretty cool because there's not a lot of us that come back to the farm after going away to school. Farming is hard. It's lots of hardships, and you know, if you lose your apple crop to a freeze, that really hurts. And so I looked into a corn maze and pumpkin patch, and this new thing is agritourism, which is bringing people, you know, whether they're from the city or the country, bringing them out to the farm and showing them how food grows.
So I'm really lucky that I have a nephew who's in his late 20s that's starting to farm. He's actually farming 2 of my places right now. We have this supposedly landlord-tenant relationship, but obviously we're family, so it's a little bit deeper than that. I'm more than willing to give David whatever help he needs to get started and keep farming this country.
I mean, there's some young farmers in here, but I'm probably about one of the younger ones that's actually operating the own farm in this valley. I'm still using water to grow crops. The Arkansas River is it's very key, it's very important. If the water leaves, you know, out of this valley ceases to exist. Yeah, like 2015, 16, yeah, we're getting the rain, it's looking good, but we're a semi-arid environment. I don't have the Arkansas River, I can't grow anything.
Well, we are Reeves and Betsy Brown. We ranch on the St. Charles River, which is a tributary to the Arkansas. Our main production is beef, and we live in a place that is just the most beautiful place in the world, we think, and we've been here 35 years. We have water out of the South St. Charles we can use to help produce our product.
Hi, 19. Hello, sweetie. Well, to be a rancher in Colorado is a joy, number one, but it certainly does take a lot of disciplines. In her fatness and well-designed and all, she could be on the cover of a magazine.
She could. We manage the ranch with livestock, and our goal is to make the ranch as productive and as whole and ecologically sound as we know how to do. The contribution that the river makes to the economy, the ecosystem of the riparian area, and just the natural benefit that a river has to an area and probably shouldn't be dried up. It has so many contributions to the culture and the quality of life to everybody in the valley. She made a decision when she was just 4 or 5 years old that was the only career she wanted, and she wasn't going to marry anybody that wasn't going to be a rancher. So that gave me a lot of advantage, I guess. But
is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
And she is a full partner in the operation, not just the bookkeeper, which she does that too, but she's undertaken in the last 10, 15 years to actually take over managing the cow herd. During the calving season, every calf that's born gets a tag in its ear, and we can see all that.
Oh, that's the fun part of the ranching to me, is to handle the cattle and see the babies born, especially when the grass is green and the cows are fat. We were tagging the calves so that we can identify them to their mother, and they actually get a little electronic identification tag in their ear, and that will stay with them until they've gone to the packing house in Kansas in about a year from now.
Well, the whole point of our
the contribution here is about hopefully the importance of the Arkansas River to the valley and to us and our part of the river.
Our total water right comes out of the South St. Charles. So we bless it greatly, and it is also very beautiful as it runs through the ranch in the canyon.
Of course, water is critical for life in all levels. And the Arkansas River Basin is so dependent on water for the majority of the basin that without it, it's hard to imagine how much change there would have to be, especially in the lower end of it. And all the rafting and recreation that happens on the upper streams is based to a large degree on ag water that's coming downstream for use on the farms in lower Arkansas.
Our allocation model is a 19th century sort of resource extraction model. Mining, timber, grazing on the federal lands. Our current economy is a recreation and environmental model. Wildlife viewing, bird watching, fishing, rafting, kayaking.
River flows in the Arkansas River are really revenue flows. Thinking about the fact that the Arkansas is the #1 rafted river in the state of Colorado. It produces hundreds of millions of dollars in economic output.
Because everybody understands, even the farming and the ranching community, that tourism is huge here. And whitewater rafting is a huge part of tourism.
I've been whitewater rafting down the Arkansas River about 4 times with my family and myself. We come every summer, it's like a tradition now, but it's always a blast.
My father tells me I was conceived in a boat, so I've just always been in the water. I remember being a small child and just being barely able to peek over the side of the raft.
Stretching more than 150 miles and containing 80 named rapids, the Upper Arkansas is the most rafted river in Colorado and the entire United States. With a vertical drop of more than 4,600 feet, the river between Granite and Canyon City provides whitewater adventure for nearly 200,000 visitors every year. Visitors who contribute more than $60 million to the state's economy.
It's really, really cool to be able to show somebody something so beautiful for the first time and be part of their experience.
See ya.
The rafting lifestyle is it's kind of a carefree lifestyle. You know, you make do with what you have, and you're just glad to be out in the outdoors and being able to take people to beautiful places like this every day.
When I first started rafting, I said, this is it. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I fell in love with it wholeheartedly from the beginning, and I still love it so much.
Located between Buena Vista and Salida, the Browns Canyon National Monument is a favorite stretch of the river for those who enjoy rafting, hiking, and wildlife viewing. The Arkansas River carves a path through rugged granite ridges in this crown jewel of the Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area.
Browns Canyon is just one of those special places. I mean, it's going to be good to protect it, so future generations will be able to enjoy it just as I've been able to enjoy it, and people before me have been able to enjoy it.
The best way to see the National Monument will be to raft or kayak through the area, because there are no paved roads that go right into the heart of the National Monument like the river does. The river goes right down the center of the National Monument. It'll be a perfect opportunity for people to explore that area.
It's that one stretch of river that you can send an entire family down, and everybody's going to have a good time. Whether it's your first-time boater or your veteran paddler, it's got something for everybody in there, and then the scenery just takes the cake.
But what we anticipate is that, like other national monuments, it will continue to draw more people to this fantastic spot and probably increase the use of 2 of our recreation areas, Hecla Junction and Ruby Mountain, which are both gateways into the National Monument itself.
I feel like when I was a kid, the river wasn't such a central piece of this town, and now with the Whitewater Park, it really holds like a stronger piece in the community as a whole.
I love rafting, tubing,
So yeah, in the summer I just go ballistic in the river.
It's been a fantastic way to both celebrate and enjoy the river, but also engage the public in managing our water resources. And clearly there's a beneficial use there as well, not just from the economic influx in these communities, but just the level of social investment that we're seeing by people becoming aware and more engaged in those conversations. It's been a fantastic catalyst for that.
So this is the Raft Rodeo. This is the most exciting event of the whole festival, in my opinion. If you like carnage, you like seeing people swim, you like seeing boats go upside down, this is the event.
The goal is to get into the wave and get a good surf, so when it's holding on to you and you're literally surfing in the hydraulic, and then to do the coolest trick to get out of the surf. Being the only girl, and I'm obviously of small stature out there that day, Jesse and I were both kind of banking on me like getting some crowd enthusiasm. So that's what I was trying to do. And then in that moment, I think I couldn't think of anything better to do than jump in.
The whitewater parks over the years have really gained popularity. There's so many different things you can do with them. It brings so many people here to see what's going on right here. And I mean, you can hear the crowd. This is an amazing thing that we're doing here. We're in upwards of 20 different events that we run on the river. Everything from national raft racing, kayak racing, just so many different boogie board, stand-up paddleboard, kayak, all kinds of different events are going on here. I think we have one of the best whitewater festivals in Colorado. FIBARC up in Salida does a great job. They're the oldest whitewater festival I think in the world. It's running around close to 60 years. They do a great job. We aspire to be as big as them someday, and I think we're right there on their heels.
Beautiful move right there on the stern, and then a back loop. Dane really picking up some big points right here. Doing that orbit the other way. You can score tricks one time, but from each direction.
This is the best place to go river surfing, maybe one of the best places in the country. And it's just right here in Pueblo.
So we loaded up the Subaru with a bunch of boards that we had from California, and we just started driving around searching for waves. We jumped in the river in random places, and we're basically just trying to see if there were any pockets that would hold us in one spot so we could stand up and practice surfing. And that was the most exciting thing ever, to stand up on a board in the river and be surfing in Colorado.
When they built the kayak park, we just like jumped right in. So I think we were down here like the day the kayak park opened, and started surfing, been doing it ever since.
After that, we found out people have been river surfing, you know, all over the world for a long time, but we thought we invented it. So,
the river provides tremendous recreational value for me, just because it's a very low entry cost sport. Most of the boards that you see out here are $100 off Amazon. So you get your board, wetsuit, make sure you have a life vest.
Party wave is just when everybody gets in there and we all try to stand up at the same time. And then if we're all in there for too long, we try to push each other out, and just, it's a good time. It's fun to just go in there and horse around and you know, try to dunk each other. And
Well, it gives it kind of this urban, you know, feel to it. I mean, where else can you live in a little town, basically an industrial town, and surf 5 minutes from your door, and then go to work, you know, after you go surfing? It's great.
I always tell people, you know, I'll take care of the biology and then fishing will take care of itself, and that's really true. And that's indeed what's happened. I mean, as this river fishery's improved, you build it and they will come. anglers have showed up. It's the most popular river, or most popular fishery, lake or stream in the entire state of Colorado, has been since 2008. As a matter of fact, this past year, Colorado Parks and Wildlife bestowed the gold medal status on a significant stretch of the Arkansas River, close to 102 miles, the longest stretch of gold medal water in the state of Colorado. We have a great, one of the best fishers in the state now, and we have a lot of anglers that have responded to that. And obviously, that's going to have economic spin-offs.
The Arkansas River fishery and the surrounding tributary fisheries and high lake fisheries that feed into this river are all kind of part of one big system, and they're all totally integral to the success of our business.
The advantage we have on this river that most rivers don't, and we're unique in this regard as well, but we've got close to 70% of the river miles from Leadville to Canyon City is public in one way or another. So there's a lot of river mileage where people can spread out, where we can absorb that use a little bit more. You're still going to be able to come to the Arkansas River even with increased use, and you're going to be able to find a stretch of river where you're by yourself. Most rivers can't say that anywhere in the western U.S.
The Arkansas River is loved by many people for many different reasons. And we can probably agree on many of them, but certainly there's different attributes that speak to different people. And so here in July on the Arkansas, it's probably the most diverse recreation going on. You have people wade fishing and float fishing, as we do year-round, really. And then you also have the addition of recreational boating, which can be rafting, it can be kayaking, it can be stand-up paddle boards, even some tubers. We all try to get along and work together, and the key to that is learning a little more about one another so that hopefully we don't negatively impact one another. It's a big enough river that people can work around one another, and so boats don't need to pass right through where somebody's fishing. There's a lot of people who love this river, and the wonderful thing about it is we actually can all have that relationship individually, and it doesn't have to negatively impact those of others.
While fishing on the Arkansas River can be a year-round activity, spring and fall are generally the best seasons for fishing. From late spring into mid-summer, the river swells with runoff that attracts whitewater rafters. The Voluntary Flow Management Program has been an effective tool to maximize recreational use of the river for both fishermen and whitewater enthusiasts.
Over the years, we've learned to work together. That is, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the Bureau of Land Management, AROA, the Arkansas River Outfitters Association, TU, Chaffee County, others have learned to work with Southeastern Colorado Water Conservancy District and the Bureau of Reclamation to move that water at optimum times that benefits both whitewater boating, rafting and kayaking, and the fishery. Hence, we try to move a lot of water in the middle of the summer to benefit whitewater boating, not too much water in the spring and fall because that's better for the fishery.
When I was in high school back in the early 70s, by 4th of July, you couldn't raft the Arkansas in an average year. The flow was just too low. Now, with the voluntary flow agreement, you can raft all the way through into August.
We know that if we relied upon native flows alone, that we may not have the type of rafting and kayaking that we currently enjoy. And so being able to work with those entities, move water from the upper reservoirs to the lower reservoirs, that type of cooperation is priceless given the cost of water today. So the 10,000 acre-feet of water that the Bureau allows us to move in the summer months for boating or not move during the spring and fall, you can't put a price tag on it.
When we move that water from Twin Lakes and Clear Creek and Turquoise down to Pueblo can affect the recreational opportunities on the river. So during parts of the year, you want the flow lower so that the fish can spend more of their energy feeding rather than fighting current.
We figured out that fish could not feed efficiently during critical times of the year. They just weren't able to utilize the improved forage base created from heavy metal cleanup. With a creative flow management program, we were able to develop a program that benefited the fish populations at critical periods of the year to where they could utilize those improved groceries and grow well and put on weight.
You know, so here we sit on the banks of the Arkansas and we have this great asset down at the bottom, this bucket being Pueblo Reservoir, and upstream we have a couple of other big buckets. And that system of managing reservoirs allows really sustained use throughout the Arkansas River between those buckets.
The flow program is not a water right, but it's become enshrined in other water rights to the point where it's got a structure out there in the legal description of the river that is that has given it a lot of strength.
In 6 years, you know, this river has gone from being only known by the locals and a handful of other people from nearby to getting some national publicity and certainly across the state. When I first moved down here in 2006, you know, I'd come out and fish. I might see 1 or 2 other people in a day of fishing. And now it's bringing people in from not only across the state, but across the country, really.
So my name is Frank Smethurst, and this is my fishing teammate, Nate Bronson, and we're Team Scott Costa. Pueblo tailwater being so low elevation is so unbelievably fertile.
An annual winter fishing tournament, sponsored by the local chapter of Trout Unlimited, invites teams of fly fishermen to compete for prizes and bragging rights. With its relatively low elevation for a Colorado tailwater, the Arkansas River below Pueblo Dam has become a favorite for Front Range anglers during the winter months.
Yeah, it's just it's a slam dunk.
I say it all the time, we're hidden in plain sight. Here we are in a relatively large city for Colorado, and people don't know how fantastic our fishing is. We don't have that same famous legacy as like the South Platte and some of these other areas, or you know, the Dreamstream area. People don't know about us. We're a new tailwater, so we get to kind of write our own history with it now, which is really exciting.
The tailwater starts at Pueblo Reservoir and flows downstream through about 10 miles of river through the town of Pueblo. Today we're doing a mark recapture study on the trout fishery in this water. So we do that through raft electrofishing.
Oh, fish, fish, fish!
And then we have our chase boat right here behind me, where we are doing the weighing and measuring of the fish. So we have a tank on here that we transfer the fish from the raft shocking boat onto this boat, and then they're weighing and measuring them, getting a size in centimeters and then a weight in grams. And I use that information to help me calculate the biomass of fish in this river. It's looking really promising, and I'm really excited about what we found. We also found a 59 centimeter brown trout last week, which is about 23.5 inches. I don't remember what it weighed, but that's a really awesome brown trout.
So one of the most surprised looks I get from people is when I tell them that some of our best fishing is in November and December and January. People don't think of fly fishing as a wintertime activity, but when you live in this banana belt kind of warm area of the state, it gives us those opportunities.
Recent improvements to the Pueblo tailwater include boulder clusters and other structure that provide holding water for fish. The Legacy Project, a $7.5 million joint effort by the Army Corps of Engineers, the state of Colorado, and the city of Pueblo, has contributed greatly to the quality of fishing for anglers from up and down the Front Range.
In recent years, we've had a contractor come in and fix a lot of the habitat structures, the cross veins, the J-hooks, the weirs, and the boulder clusters.
The thing that it was missing before was a good amount of holding water. The improvement project has really, I think, increased the holding capacity through additional habitat.
The city of Pueblo made a lot of investments in improving the fishery through what's called the Legacy Project, and they were concerned that future operations of Pueblo Reservoir and those big municipal entities that move water through this reach, that we could have a negative impact on those improvements they've made to the fishery. And so that program strives to maintain at least 100 CFS below Pueblo Reservoir, and then higher flows during the summer for the whitewater park that was built through the leveed section of the Arkansas River in Pueblo.
Trans Mountain diversions
are a fascinating engineering feat. It's only through trans-mountain diversions that we can have millions of people living on the Front Range in Colorado.
80% of the water falls on the western slope. 80% of the population is on the eastern slope.
Some of the water rights that we and our partners in SDS have are trans-mountain water rights. So basically we have collection systems on the west slope, bring the water through a series of tunnels to the east slope, and then are able to get that water to town through pipelines.
My name's Glenn Scriver. I'm the caretaker at Grizzly. Grizzly Reservoir was built as the reservoir for a trans-mountain water diversion project built back in the 1930s. They went out exploring, looking for places, where water wasn't claimed yet. And this is where they ended up, the upper reaches of the Roaring Fork River.
Boring through solid granite from either side, the tunnel was off by only 6 inches when they met in the middle. This called for celebration. Water engineers, laborers, and farmers marked the accomplishment with a feast of mule steaks and raspberry gelatin.
Most of the year we get in and out whenever we can through this tunnel. It's about 3.87 miles long, so you can drive it with a mid-sized pickup or something smaller than that. So we go back and forth whenever we can through the tunnel.
So the very earliest trans-basin diversions, you just went in and you built it, and you took, if you could, you took every drop off of the west slope stream and brought it into this side of the mountains.
We collect 54 square miles of water drainage over there, and originally it went down to Crowley County and was used for sugar beets. And the story goes, then there got so much water, sugar beet prices went down because there were so many sugar beets that it kind of fell apart, and it was ups and downs, And eventually the water ended up getting bought out by municipalities who needed the water, and water was valuable, and so.
Trans-mountain diversions have impacts to the basin that the water originated. This project here, the Fry Arc project, was it was kind of one of the big projects built during the environmental era as that started to roll. And so it looks very different. At every diversion where this water originates on the west slope, there's bypass flows, so they can't take the entire flow of any of the creeks that they intercept.
My name's David Curtis, and I work for Pueblo Border Waterworks. I'm the ditch rider. I take care of the ditches along the Continental Divide here in the Leadville area. It's where we divert water from the western slope back to the east. So I just monitor and maintain our water rights, tracking water, charting water, diverting water, and just monitoring the stream flows on a day-to-day basis.
So every spring we come up here about 1st of April, start removing snow out of our ditches. We have a big bulldozer in the ditch removing snow so the water can run freely through the ditch, and then a big front-end loader cleans the snow off the road so we can access our ditches and get ready for spring runoff. So we the board sends up 2 operators every spring from our Pueblo location. The snowpack has dropped quite a bit, but we still are above average, and a little bit of icy conditions on the Ewing ditch, but other than that, pretty good year. It looks like it's going to be a good year for water.
I don't think there is any more valuable lesson for a president or member of the House and Senate than to fly as we have flown today over some of the bleakest land in the United States, and then to come to a river and see what grows next to it, and come to this city and come to this town and come to this platform and know how vitally important water is.
In terms of the massive Bureau of Reclamation scale or Army Corps of Engineers scale like Pueblo Reservoir, those scale projects, I think we've seen their heyday. I don't think those are coming back anytime soon.
Here in the arid West, storage is and has been critical to our economic viability.
because before we settled this area, we had the spring runoff happen in 2 or 3 months of the year. 80–90% of the water left the state.
With climate change, climate variability, and all these needs, storage is a key component to everything we do as we move forward.
Storage is a critical component because it offers flexibility to the entire system.
If you just conserve water, but you just let that conserved water go downstream, you haven't really helped provide new supply for growth or for other purposes. So storage, we thought, was absolutely critical to Colorado's future water needs, to be able to make the most of the supply it has and to be able to make the most of the strategies that the Colorado Water Plan has talked about.
I think people need to understand that although we're living in an area with a lot of trees and water features like harp here, that water is a scarce commodity in the West, and it depends on what time you're in as to how much water you're going to have. You need storage to keep the water. Some people don't like storage projects, but without storage projects, the Arkansas River would only be able to support the number of people that could survive when it was at its absolute lowest in that drought period.
Storage is sort of like a savings account at the bank, whereas the natural flow of the river is almost like your weekly paycheck. And so a lot of times your weekly paycheck will be enough to get you by, and it's relatively steady. But if you get laid off, all of a sudden your savings account becomes extremely important. And so that's what reservoirs like Pueblo Reservoir and others are. They're water savings accounts.
We watch water flow past here for a whole year in my lifetime, several times, and go all the way to the Gulf. Well, that water could have been trapped. I would like to see a lot more water trapped. So I absolutely would like to see more storage and more work done on aquifer storage.
You have two types of storage. You have dams that you can put storage in reservoirs and dams, or you can put it in underground storage. The underground storage has a lot of room most places, and if you can percolate the water back into the ground and use that as your storage vessel, you can hold water. It doesn't evaporate as much. Now you lose a little bit because you can't pull it all out, but you can get most of it out. Allows you to have a different way to store.
But we just approved 2 grants to look at a multipurpose storage project in the Upper Basin, and it's actually going to use both surface storage and alluvial storage, another great asset Colorado has that's underutilized.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some lease fallowing. Certainly that's going to be a big thing. But I think that tied with alluvial storage, buying water on the spot market, and doing that year in and year out as a management practice is going to create some type of base flow water availability source on this river that we can utilize. It will become, I think, a virtual renewable resource.
There are certain things that we can't control, and growth is one of them. I think the statistic is Denver gets 1,000 new residents every month, and that water is going to come from somewhere. I just really hope that it doesn't come at the cost of an entire valley.
I really do think that Crowley County sold their birthright when they sold their water.
Crowley County is a poster boy for how you do not take water off the land.
We exported or sold the most valuable resource we had.
What I would say to other people, you better look at the situation really hard and think about what has happened to Crowley County over the years, and was the money worth it?
The Crowley County was one of the most fertile farm areas in the lower valley, and it just dried up.
Some good land for crops. Rocky Ford's real proud of their Rocky Ford melons, but if you wanted really good melons when the Colorado Canal was in operation, you got them on the north side. You got them under the Twin Lakes Colorado Canal system.
I can remember as a young person and my husband and I farming all those years, of the beautiful cornfields, the alfalfa fields, melons growing, tomato fields. It was pretty. And even in our history, in the early 1900s, from this area of the town of Crowley to the town of Alney Springs, they said all of the acreage on the north side of the railroad, there were thousands of acres of orchards. Now that's hard to believe that you could consider all of those orchards, and it was just beautiful in the springtime.
If you took the water away from this area, there's absolutely no reason to stop anywhere between Pueblo and Lamar. I mean, there's nothing here. We get 11 inches of rain a year, which what's a cow unit need around here? Probably 60 acres?
Yeah, about 40 to 60 acres.
Yeah, 40 to 60 acres for one cow, and that's what would be right here right now. That means you can't farm here. You go to Lyman, you go 50 miles north to Carville, it rains enough you can dryland farm. You go just past Los Animas, you can dryland farm. Here, no, you cannot. I mean, this is either prairie or it's irrigated. There's nothing here.
The governor said he wants to continue the growth in the state, and there's 5 million people living on the Front Range. So think about 10 or 11 million, how much more water that is, and where are they going to get it? I think we know the answer to that.
And unfortunately, the farmers down there can get a lot more money from those water brokers up in Denver. I'm afraid they're just going to sell to the highest bidder.
When you think about water transfers that have occurred over time in the Arkansas Valley, we tried to understand what the detrimental effect was on local communities. So you think about Crowley County and Ordway and Sugar City, that really changed the face of the Main Street economy that took place there in the households.
I think everyone that sold had a reason for selling, and that I can't deny them the right that they had to sell that water.
If we ever sell our water, you know, the farmer's the one that's going to be, you're going to be okay. You've got something of value to sell. The guy that gets really hurt is the guy on Main Street that depends, his business depends on all the farmers around. And at the end of the day, losing your water, you lose your community, and that's the sad part about it.
There was a lot of controversy and ill feelings among those that didn't want to sell, and my husband and I thought that we were doing the right thing at the time. I think if we had it to do over again, possibly we might do things a little bit different. Who knows?
There's no new water. We've got the water we've got right now.
And I would encourage everyone to just be aware. Water's got to come from somewhere. We're not piping it in from another state.
Of course, in prior days, people got by. There wasn't an automatic dishwasher and an automatic clothes washer, and there wasn't a flush toilet and a shower. It was a Saturday night bath, and you just didn't use much water.
Basically, we're not making more water, but we're making a whole lot more people. And that's really our issue, is we're going to have a much larger population, doubling by 2050, possibly, from 5 million to 10 million. So without more supply, how do you propose to fix this gap?
And what we expect is that supply of water is going to be more variable over time, and then we may even have less of it with something like climate change. At the same time, we're certain that we'll have more uses for water, whether that be because of increasing numbers of households in the Arkansas River Basin, or because our plants and crops will need more water as the temperature increases with climate change.
In general, there's going to be less precipitation, but we're not really sure exactly how that's going to fall out in the Arkansas. And that sort of combined increase in water demand, decrease in water supply is going to require us to have new strategies that are not like the ones we've relied on in the past.
Every year, water professionals gather to share their strategies to address the looming gap in Colorado's water supply. Colorado State University's climate scientist Brad Udall has seen firsthand the delicate balance between supply and demand.
Changes to the water cycle are the biggest impact of climate change. You would think it actually might be sort of a wash, but it turns out it's a net negative. You get more floods, you get more droughts. We expect to see a shifted, what's called a hydrograph, the annual flow of water during the year. And everybody knows spring runoff, right? Well, that will come earlier. And then those lower flows that have happened in the fall will actually be even lower than they are now.
But others see a brighter future. James Eklund, representative to the Arkansas Compact, believes that a combination of conservation and storage, as outlined in the governor's water plan, will allow us to address the gap.
We project in the water plan, if we're able to hit 400,000 acre-feet of conservation and 400,000 acre-feet of new storage by 2050, we'll zero that gap out so that standing in 2030 telling our kids and our grandkids that here's the Colorado you're going to inherit, we no longer have to say 2050 there's a gap of almost 500,000 acre-feet that you're going to have to figure out. So we want them to inherit a state that's strong and stable and healthy on water, and I think the water plan strikes that balance.
When I was first coming to Pueblo, just as a young student from Los Animas, I'd come up here to visit. Fountain Creek was just a little creek, and in the summertime, it would even dry up.
Fountain Creek is a great question, and it's a great question for the region because there are multiple stakeholders and beneficiaries of getting that river figured out and managed appropriately. As Colorado Springs grows and they get, more parking lots, more rooftops, that sort of thing, when it rains up there, that water comes off faster. Instead of soaking into natural grassland, it's now coming off rooftops and parking lots, and it hits the creek faster. Which makes flooding a little more of a concern in Pueblo.
We're here this morning at Helen Hunt Falls on Cheyenne Creek, which is a small tributary of Fountain Creek, tributary to the Arkansas River. And this watershed, and particularly the watershed health, is really critical not only to us locally, but to folks downstream. If you've been around Colorado for a while, there was an old Coors ad. That's not downstream beer, right? We had a lot of pride that we were the upstream state, so we realize now as the upstream folks in Fountain Creek, we've got a moral obligation to our neighbors downstream.
There's been frustration in Pueblo with the fact that Colorado Springs has had difficulty keeping a stormwater utility going. And I think Colorado Springs has struggled to get there, not necessarily because people at Colorado Springs Utilities don't want it to happen, but it's always a political challenge to convince people to pay more for something, and especially if they think that it's primarily to benefit Pueblo.
The 1950 census, El Paso County was 45,000 people and Pueblo County was 90,000 people. It was the second biggest city in the state. So that turnover, where today Pueblo is 140,000 people and Colorado Springs is 600,000 people, is because we have that water supply and we've grown. So Mayor Suthers saw our obligation, stepped up and embraced that, and I think the solution he's put together now really does meet that moral obligation as an upstream neighbor.
Instead of pointing the finger at each other, we're figuring out how we can make sure that that creek is going to be sustainable as it feeds into the Arkansas River and moves down the Arkansas River Basin to make sure that the water that we are dealing with is safe for everyone.
It's a very complex stream, and basically we have looked upon this as a real challenge. Try and get a handle, get your arms around all the chemical and biological problems of this stream and its watershed.
We've got to get in front of water quality. Reg 85 kicks in 2022. That's 5 years from now. So we have to get in front of this. Fountain Creek with the discharge, it's a double-edged sword. Some people believe the discharge coming out of Colorado Springs makes the river worse. Some people believe it makes it better. One thing I can say is it puts water in the river, and that's what's going to make Fountain Creek a great river.
We tend to think down here that Fountain Creek is a big part of our water supply, and to have people suggesting that it be dammed up or the water slowed down, what that does is it changes the ownership of that water. And so you have to be very careful how you do that.
My dad used to say you can build a fence around a buffalo as long as the buffalo stays behind the fence. Once the buffalo decides he's going, the fence isn't going to stop him. Fountain Creek's kind of the same way. When it floods, it's going to go. But a lot of things that we can do to mitigate that impact as opposed to trying to build some big monolithic dam, I think is a better solution. And I think right now there's real, genuine cooperation between the two communities to get some solutions in place.
So I think right now we're finally bearing the fruit of all the hard work over the last 10, 20 years. Ken Salazar, he was a big factor in improving Fountain Creek. I would say one of the biggest factors in improving Fountain Creek, it was Bob Rollins. I mean, Bob Rollins wanted to see the Arkansas Valley, Fountain Creek, become what it should be. And not just a dumping ground, but just this pristine river. And I think we're going to get there eventually.
When you talk about water quality and starting with the snowpack at the top of the system and how it moves downstream, you have to keep in mind the water is used and reused. We use our water 6 or 7 times in the Arkansas Basin before it gets all the way to Kansas.
This is why we need to complete the Arkansas River conduit downstream to La Junta, Los Animas, and Lamar.
Well, we've been waiting 50 years. I would love to see something happen with the Ark Valley conduit.
The conduit will help a lot of cities, small towns along the way.
Bringing clean water in a pipeline is really beneficial to those communities, and it preserves their economic vitality. And essentially what's happened is we know so much more about what's in our water that we're trying to be careful to make sure everybody's protected.
You can't stay within the EPA's regulations anymore. They're tightening the regulations. Our water's the same as we were drinking when we were kids, but now it's bad for you.
With detection limits of analytical instruments constantly declining, yeah, you reach that level of we can always detect some component in something, particularly in water. But there are certain what we call benchmarks.
Actually, in the long run, it would give us a safer, purer water when it's all done. It's a long-term project. It's been on the drawing boards for a long time. Each year we think we're getting a little closer. Eventually it will come through. It's also a costly project for all the towns along Arkansas.
The conduit is a big project. It's a lot of money and a huge project, but its benefits will be for those citizenry having the same drinking water that the rest of the basin has.
Their quality of life in Colorado is every bit as important as anyone else's. So yes, it'll be a high cost on a per capita basis, but I think it's vital to the economic well-being of the Arkansas Valley, because without a safe, reliable water supply, you're not going to attract the new people to live in your community, let alone keep your existing children to grow up there.
Prosperity always follows big water projects. I challenge you to find me one big water project where prosperity does not follow it. I think it's going to be very important to southeastern Colorado to get clean drinking water down there.
Yeah, the Arkansas Valley conduit is a question of not if, but when. It has to happen. It's critical to that entire valley. And that means that the conduit has to, you know, it's too important to failure. Failure is not an option, as we say about the water plan.
The great thing about the Arkansas River is that I can have this intense personal relationship with it. And the fact that you have an intense personal relationship with it too does not diminish my relationship in the least. And to me, that's kind of like the heart of this multiple use ethic. And you know, like most relationships, it takes a little hard work sometimes. You get out of it what you put into it.
What's really amazing about the Arkansas, maybe the most cherished part of the basin, is its ability to balance those needs.
Doesn't matter your political affiliation, doesn't matter what agencies you're in, eventually you'll have to all sit down at the same table.
What people need to understand is this is collectively about a group working together for the betterment of the Arkansas River, for the betterment of Fountain Creek, southeastern Colorado.
It's really a remarkable story that they've been able to tell, and it's part of Colorado's water plan that we try and highlight all the good things that are going on in terms of collaboration across sectors like they're doing down there.
All the way down into your street, that's where we will meet. Run away with me and all the way down bottom of my chest. You're the one that I love best. You're the one that I love, oh, one that I love. Oh, down, down we go, every mountain valley, every city alley, oh, everywhere we go. Oh, down, down we go, every country road, little rolling stones, all the places we don't know, all the way down, bottom of my chest. You're the one that I love best.